Hello, welcome on in. There's so much things that are happening, breaking news all over the place. We got to talk about it. Here with me today is the Latter-day Lion. And on today's show, here's what we're going to hit. The big Ear Bulletin, the breaking news. Ben Shapiro talks about ex-Mormons and furries. Nobody had that on their bingo card for this year. Why is he saying that? We're going to get to it. ExMormon Subreddit controversy. You want to tune in for that? Then we'll get to Trunk Treasures on X. There's been a lot of heated discussion back and forth. I want to dig into a debate, maybe not a debate, but a back and forth between Ward Radio and Jim Bennett, both friends of the program. And last, we'll hit the Through Elephant's Eyes, Science versus God. We'll talk about that briefly at the end. If you haven't seen, I released a video about it. Please go check it out. But let's just jump right into this first segment here and hit it.
Run.
All right, so I'm sure you're familiar with this news. Monty Lion and the Holy Grail, Latter-day
Yes.
Lion. Let's just let Ben Shapiro speak for himself a little bit here. This is the clip that was going around, and hopefully everyone can hear it, but let's do it. Maybe, here we go.
Because obviously there are loosely associated or tightly associated groups of transgender-oriented, left-wing political ex-Mormon furries. I mean, like, it's a bizarre melange, apparently.
Okay, so in case you live under a rock, okay, Charlie Kirk was murdered. Still terrible fallout from all of that.
I'm not laughing at that. I'm laughing at what Ben said.
Yeah, that's fine. And so they're doing some investigation onto who the shooter was. This person apparently is an ex-Mormon that is involved with some of these discords in some furry movement or whatever, transgenderism. So I don't know. It's an interesting time because we have President Nelson. I almost said President Monson. President Nelson, who's saying, we need to be pacemakers, and it's like, how do we do that? Because some ideologies are better than others. I don't think that's a shock for anyone to hear. And it doesn't matter what side you're on. Like, some ideologies are better than others, and some are more prone to promoting violence than others. And we'll get into a little bit more of this discussion, but one of these ideologies that seems to promote violence, at least recently, is some of this extreme leftism of this transgender ideology. Apparently, furries, this stuff is related to that. But anyway, I just got to pause. Latter-day Lion, give me your thoughts and your take on some of what's going on with all of this. Do you follow Ben Shapiro at all?
I used to. I don't follow him as much as I did. But given what he said here, I mean, again, it's just funny how he delivers it. But it's true though. Like, for whatever reason, and I spend a lot of time on TikTok, and whatever your feelings are on that, and I honestly feel that TikTok is probably a step above Reddit, whatever your feelings are on that. And but there are a lot of weird things that can be considered social contagions, and I know like folks like Jacob Hansen have talked about things like that in his videos in the past and whatnot, but it really just kind of shows, I think, just how. Let me back up for a second. When everything happened last week with Charlie Kirk at UVU, I don't know about anybody else, but I felt something shift. There felt like there was a shift in the air the moment that gunshot rang out. And I think everybody could feel it, and whether or not it was a good or a bad thing could really only depend on the person. I still have yet to decide fully what that ultimately means. But given what we now know about who did this and what their ultimate motivations were, because we do have that information now. The FBI has released that, and this is something that Ben is going to be talking about here too. I hesitate to paint with a broad brush, but given my experience, it's hard not to. That the ex-Mormon community, especially those who are chronically online, chronically online ex-Mormon community, I guess I should say, lends itself to this. And again, I hate to paint with a broad brush, but just based on my own personal
couldn't you
experience,
say that
that's what
about
I see.
every community that like
You
just
could.
online in general seems to be bad? I mean, I think that's one of the things that's driving people crazy about this. Well, let me ask you this, because some people are saying, you know, a Minnesota lawmaker was recently murdered, or you have like these different school shootings, and people don't seem to be as upset about those as they are about Charlie Kirk. So,
Right.
why do you think that it? Because I don't know, it just seems like that is the case. And I think it is the case, and I have my own thoughts on that. But first, I kind of want to hear.
There are two reasons for that. One is because the Charlie Kirk, I think his assassination was so public, and we have repeated video of it from multiple different angles. I mean, if you want, you know, the X has scrubbed this, thankfully, but the very first video that I saw, and I saw only two of them, but I saw the one from the Cougar Chronicle, which was on the right side. They were a good, like, you know, about 200 feet away. So they weren't like up close and personal, but you could definitely see what was going on. And then I saw the up close
disturbing video. Man. Yeah.
Oh, it was absolutely disturbing.
I saw
and
too many. Yeah. I regret kind of seeing it. Like whenever I see someone like getting shot in a video, I like almost instantly regret it. It just makes you sick.
It's nothing like the movies. Nothing like the movies.
It's something terrible to see.
Yeah.
And okay, I think that's one thing. So you said you have two things. I think you're right about that.
The second is that what Charlie ultimately symbolized, because Charlie symbolized ongoing dialogue, and one of the things that he repeatedly said, especially after he got assaulted, battered, at almost every opportunity that he had, like there are videos flying around social media right now of these very things, but he believed in open dialogue, regardless of whether or not they agreed or not.
Yeah.
And that was his purpose. I mean, as much as people want to hate it, especially those who abjectly opposed him, he is, I would say, probably the 21st century equivalent of Martin Luther King, who also wanted dialogue, who also wanted civil discourse, who wanted peaceful resolutions, who then was also assassinated, albeit not as publicly. But that's what he represented. He represented that peaceful discourse and that peaceful dialogue, because I think he and Charlie Kirk both realized that the moment conversation breaks down is the moment violence starts. That's you know, kind of a paraphrase for him, but you know, there's a video out there that I actually do kind of appreciate, and I have it saved on TikTok, where you know, he says to someone again who's kind of opposing him, when communication breaks down, that's when bad things happen. When communication breaks down in a marriage, that's when divorce happens. When communication breaks down in a nation, that's when civil war starts.
Ooh, dang. I'm seeing a few others pop up in the chat that I think are worth mentioning, a third and fourth, if you will. The third is, like, this is very kind of close to home for the church. You have an ex-member. This occurred in Utah. And, you know, and a lot of people live close to that. And so it's kind of like this eerie feeling of like, wow, like this is happening in our own backyard. Another one that someone mentioned is this other one. Another Christopher said that they, you know, a lot of people were big fans of Charlie Kirk.
Yeah,
and like, you know, considered him almost like a friend, like someone who was sane. Like he's a spokesperson for what they believed, and to see him shot for his beliefs is almost like, oh my gosh, like, am I going to get shot for my beliefs, kind of a thing?
Right.
Yeah.
And that was one of the major things, like with a lot of, like, if you were even just remotely on the right, like Charlie Kirk was milk toast compared to some of the other folks out there.
I mean, the far right didn't like him.
No, not really. And what's interesting is that a lot of people tried to pin Tyler Robinson to the far right, and it later turned out, no, he was on the far left. Like almost like they were, no, he's not part of us. He's not part of us. No. But
you sound like Jimmy Kimmel.
right. And I guess we'll talk about him in a little bit, but that was the thing, is that the cope was so hard. They were coping.
I mean,
so
does it
hard.
matter though what side he's on? Because at the end of the day, like, I mean, I think it does do a disservice to try and say like left or right, in the sense that now I will say that like some ideologies are obviously like much worse than others, right? But I think the unfortunate thing is there's a lot of people in the middle who either vote Democrat, vote Republican, that are being painted as these extremists. But extremists on either side,
right,
are really the problem here. And so, like, I can see why someone who maybe like has, votes Democrat, Jim Bennett, for example, he's being painted as this left person of the left, which is funny because he's not really of the left. He's a traditional.
He's left
Republican.
leaning. I would say.
Sure. But he's more of like a traditional Republican. It leans more left, at least compared to, the new Republican movement, right?
Yeah.
And so...
I would say a little bit different. Like when it comes to like the new Republican movement, there have actually been some studies that have shown that, like, especially those that align more with the Democrats, like just in the last 30 years, have seen a much further leftward pull versus those that identify as Republicans, and they've only moved slightly. And the only thing that's really kind of shifted is really more where the center is.
Yeah.
And
well, that's true too. The left has also changed. The liberals aren't like Bill Clinton anymore.
No,
they're much more extreme.
But Bill Clinton's not like Bill Clinton anymore.
That's true. That's true too. But what I'm trying to say, and I also don't think Jim Bennett's doing himself any favors here because he's all about. He's been saying online. We'll get to what Jim and Ward Radio have been going back and forth on. He's been saying like, "Oh, don't paint this the wrong. Like everyone who voted different than you is the problem." It's like, well, Jim,
which is why I was like, I don't want to paint people with a broad brush, but we also have to recognize patterns here.
Right. And I don't think anyone is saying that the people who vote different than them are the problem. I think the obvious problem are those who are celebrating this, which is just disgusting. I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry. That is disgusting.
It's disgusting. Why apologize for that? It is absolutely disgusting.
Right. Yeah.
Like, why?
Yeah. So it is a crazy. So this relates to the church. You maybe saw this New York Post article kind of saying that he was raised Mormon, and some people were saying that the negative things about the church. But most of it, I think I haven't really seen much besides the New York Post even mention that he had any connection to the church. In fact, because there's really only one source saying it, I don't even know like how churchy he ever was. Like, I don't even know how active his family ever was. Maybe there's more that's come out about that, but he obviously was not involved with the church in any way, shape, or form for a while.
It's been at least 10 years. And a lot of that.
Do you know, are you just pulling that number out of the air?
I'm not.
Is that
actually,
from somewhere? Because I'm curious.
This actually is from somewhere. That a lot. You'd be surprised just how many people were able, like the whole 6 degrees of separation, but on TikTok it's whittled down to 2. But the one of my TikTok mutuals, Deseret.ai, actually used to live in the area and actually got in contact with some of the people that were in the ward that these folks were in 10 years ago. And they actually left the church because their son came out as gay, and they felt like the church wasn't supporting them. And when that happened, they went and joined another church, but that son, who eventually became the killer, and I don't want to give him his name, I don't want to recognize him because of that. And it's the same thing with any kind of shooting. I never want to glorify the shooter because a lot of the times that's what they're looking for. They're looking for fame or infamy, whatever they want to do.
Just attention, but this individual, of somehow positive or negative.
Yeah. But this but they so when Trump was saying on Fox and Friends that it was actually a minister, it was actually a pastor from the church that they were attending. A lot of people, because of that ex-Mormon background, they thought they were still active Latter-day Saints. And it's like, oh, so it was the bishop that went to the dad. The dad got the confession from the son, and that way, they turned him in. No, they're not. They haven't been connected to the church for at least 10 years.
A number of sources said it was a youth pastor, and I always thought, like I would never call a bishop a youth pastor. And I get, I mean, the media is not the greatest, but I think they can know the difference between a bishop.
Right.
I would think. I don't think they'd just say, Bishop, I'm just going to write pastor.
If they're not Latter-day Saints, they would probably get the distinction wrong. But that, I think, is...
Well, if they were told bishop, why would they write pastor, and then everyone.
Right.
I guess I don't know, it's possible, but I was a little bit skeptical that all the news media
and
were just.
And it made things a bit tricky. But that's essentially what happened. So yeah, this family has not been associated with the church for at least 10 years, and so the shooter was 12 by the time they left the church. And so like we have someone in the comments, we have saying that they grew up Latter-day Saints, so it shaped them. It was evident you still are going through your formative years when you're 12 years old. Being a Latter-day Saint wouldn't have shaped him as much as they want to claim that it did. And so that's the circumstance that we're looking at here. So he was more outside of the church than he was really ever in it. At least as far as his formative years are concerned.
I mean, there could be good and bad people both inside and out of the church for sure. But I think speaking of like some ideologies are better than others, I think had he stayed in the church, the theology of the church is much, well, not at all in line with anything that he did.
And that's exactly it. Like, the theology of the church, we typically frown on murder. I mean, a lot of people were like, okay, well, what about Nephi in 1 Nephi 3? Like, what about Nephi? He never claimed. He always said that he was the exception to the rule, and never claimed to just wantonly kill people for no reason whatsoever. He was commanded by the Lord to kill Laban in order to get the plates, but that was it. He never advocated for it, and he always said, do not do this. You know, and that I think is the clear difference.
Okay, so let's get to this
obviously
other part real quick, which is about the ExMormon subreddit. So the ExMormon subreddit was having lots of posts about Charlie Kirk, and so the mods came out with this. It's actually still pinned to the top. It says, "No more discussion of Charlie Kirk, please and thanks. Greetings, ex-Mormons. After careful consideration and some valuable community feedback, we are hereby declaring moratorium on any further posts regarding Charlie Kirk and the alleged murderer. This is for two main reasons. One, in our pinned mega thread over the past few days, many comments appeared in celebration of Mr. Kirk's untimely death. We may not have agreed with many or any of Kirk's points of view, but we do honor his right to his opinion, and we do not celebrate his or any other senseless death. That's not the ethos we want in the sub, and we're done with it. Two, we've always required that all posts in the sub be connected to Mormonism in a way that aligns with the purpose of the sub, which is support for faith deconstruction, and on and on. So they're now no longer allowing discussion about Charlie Kirk. Your thoughts, Latter-day Lion?
I kind of appreciate that, especially since they go over, this we shouldn't be celebrating this, and this is going to come back to bite them, which it honestly has in many respects.
The FBI is investigating, they said, every single person who was in that Discord. And I don't know if there's any overlap with the ExMormon subreddit, but it's on the one hand, seeing that there were many comments appearing to celebrate Mr. Kirk's untimely death is again disgusting. I don't care. Like, full stop. He had now have a wife and two kids who don't have a husband and a father anymore, and a husband and father they very much loved. And so there is no, I don't think anyone should murder Charlie Kirk, but no but. Nothing,
there is no buts.
Nothing beyond
there is no buts here.
And so, in celebrate, that's really sad to see. But, there's crazy people in and out of the church. And crazy people out of the church for sure, too. And I'm glad that they have stopped that, but it's just sad that they actually had to do that. I'm glad that there's some sane people in the ExMormon subreddit who are like, no, like, that's not what this is about.
Especially the moderators there. Like, the fact that they had to do this is it should be very telling.
Curie says, it's serious when ExMormon subreddit sets boundaries.
Yes. When they have to set boundaries, things are about to go down.
Which I didn't see any of like this. So I don't know. I wasn't like following ExMormon subreddit. I don't really follow it honestly at all. But like, I think that's the reason people are still talking about this so much even now is because of this. I don't know. it's almost like a loss for words of like the upfront evil that exists where people are celebrating this public assassination that like just was so scarring for everyone who was there, and even for people who saw it online. But I mean, being there would be even worse.
Well, and I had family members who at the time were like, because I have family who consider themselves to be on the left and things like that, which is why I was saying I don't want to paint with a broad brush, because there are good people on the left. There are good Latter-day Saints who are on the left. But they didn't really, see like, why are people making such a big deal about this? There was a school shooting that happened the same day and someone died. The thing is that like trying to equate Charlie Kirk's assassination with what happened in Colorado, both are kind of instances against what they were trying to push, but that's not even the circumstance we're talking about here. But the circumstance that I'm seeing is that people are trying to downplay this if they're not outright celebrating it. And I think a lot of it has to do with a lot of what Charlie Kirk ultimately symbolized. Now, people don't necessarily have to view him in the same vein as Martin Luther King. I get that. I'm saying that he and Martin Luther King symbolized the same thing when it came to open dialogue. That's what I'm getting at. And that was the thing that Charlie Kirk symbolized in the 21st century, especially among Gen Z, Millennial, and Gen Alpha.
Yeah. I mean, when I didn't follow Charlie Kirk a ton, I obviously knew who he was. I'm a big fan of the Daily Wire. I will come out of my Daily Wire closet here, people. I am a big fan of Ben Shapiro. I will defend Ben Shapiro. Someone was saying, you better not defend Ben Shapiro. It's like, Ben Shapiro is a good guy. And just because you like someone, let's just get this out of the way, too. If it's okay to like someone that you don't agree with fully either. Like, my goodness, people, like, you're not going to agree with anyone fully. And so just because I say I like someone doesn't mean I endorse every single thing that they ever have said. No.
That is so ridiculous to kind of think that. Like, if you agree with someone 100% of the time, what's wrong with you? Like, really? But at the same time, I mean, like, I've seen some of the responses that you've gotten from some recent interviews. And it's, from both sides of the aisle, if we want to approach that, who are just so vitriolic. Why would you platform this so-and-so? Like, are you kidding me?
See, I got in trouble for platforming Jim Bennett, which is like, come on, people. Like, I
didn't want to name names, but I mean, if you're going to, I mean,
if we want to be peacemakers, we got to have conversations with each other. We need to be, I think the biggest lesson to be learned from all this is it's okay to agree to disagree. It's fine. But yeah, no, I like Ben Shapiro. I will freely admit that. I've been listening to him for a long time. I don't know, he's my favorite Daily Wire person. I like a lot of them, but he's my favorite one. I listen to him almost every day. And it's just because I think the way he thinks is aligned. Actually, we have a similar personality. He took a personality test, the same one that I've taken in the past, and we have the same personality. So maybe that's why. I don't know.
Maybe.
But I think there's a lot of people who are being great examples of being able to discuss civilly. And I think, Charlie Kirk was one of those. I think Ben Shapiro was one of those. And it's like, yeah, people, like, we can discuss things. We don't have to agree with everyone, and we can like other people. It's fine. I like Jim Bennett. I don't agree with some of the stuff he says. But I like Jim Bennett a lot. He's a nice guy. But let's get into the next segment here. We're going to do the hidden gems. In fact, speaking of Jim Bennett, we're going to talk about some of the stuff that's been going on. So now that we've kind of looked at the ex-Mormon stuff, we're going to zoom into some of the debates back and forth within the Latter-day Saint space about the Charlie Kirk assassination. All right. Before we get into that, though, I always have to shout out the purpose of the channel, which is to elevate members of the church by building bridges of understanding through fun and informative content. So literally, building bridges of understanding has been part of the goal of this channel. Point number 2, help honest actors to take the church seriously by exposing limitations for critics and correcting misconceptions. We're having fun here. Thank you for all who are participating in Ether's Elephant. We have Pachyderm members Jacob Wardle, and we have some Mammoth members. I still need to add some kind of echo to that. Jared Jensen, Kiori, thank you for the book. I'm still reading it. Jane Heikili and Thorgus. I just feel like you have to say Thorgus with like some bass to the voice.
Just give him a Mjolnir. That's what we need to do.
Yeah, and of course you can always join. There's a join button, or you can contribute just by doing super chats. That's a great way to also participate. All the proceeds go to just making better content and helping build these bridges of understanding. So thank you everyone who is participating in this. But let's get to this back and forth between Jim Bennett and Ward Radio. So both friends of the show. I'm friends with both of them. I'm pretty sure this is Cardin who owns the Ward Radio Twitter. So I guess we'll just say it's between Cardin and Jim. But the reason I want to bring it up is not to pull it out of the past and just slap mud on people. No, the whole point of this is to build bridges. So we're trying to understand kind of the back and forth here. So we're just going to go through this. I thought it was quite interesting. So Jim Bennett, and I understand some of what Jim Bennett's saying here. He says, it's really unsettling to see the constant scramble by MAGA to leverage Charlie Kirk's murder into ways to threaten and punish people who don't vote the way they do. So before I get your thoughts on this, Monty, I understand, Jim Bennett's received some threats.
Mm-hmm.
There are people, 100%, who are painting a whole side as evil. And I think there's way too much of that on both sides where, it's all the left are just trying to kill us and all the MAGAs are just trying to kill us kind of a thing. And, there is some truth to that. Now, I don't think, this is where I kind of think, I wonder what Jim Bennett's point is here, because by saying this, he's almost lumping himself in to the side that is being threatened and punished. Mm-hmm. And I don't even think he is on that side necessarily. So I'm like, Jim, you're not doing yourself favors because you're acting like he's almost acting like he is on the far left when he's not. So it's Jim, I think most people are upset about the people celebrating it. There might be a few crazies, because there's always crazies who are kind of talking more inwardly and painting with broad brushes, as you say. But anyway, your thoughts, Latter-day Line.
I find it interesting with Jim's comment here. Now, don't get me wrong. Jim has blocked me on X. He blocked me a long time ago. I don't even know what I did.
Oh, really?
Yeah, maybe I don't even know what I did.
I'm not blocked.
Yeah, well, good.
Not yet.
Someone, not yet. Well, we'll see.
No,
who knows? Friends. He might after this. No, good. I'm glad, because honestly, I wanted to have that dialogue with him. Now, honestly, on Twitter, especially since I'm not, one of the premium members, I'm only limited to the 250 characters unless I want to do a whole entire thread.
Yeah.
But
hey, so see, he doesn't have the check mark, which I'm actually impressed with how much engagement he gets without the check mark.
That's true. That is true.
I was shocked to see that today. I'm like, wait, he doesn't have a check mark? He gets retweeted and hearted a ton.
Yeah.
So that's crazy.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of that has to do with his claim to fame with the CES letter response. I want to say probably about 10 or so years ago now.
Has it been that long? Dang.
It has been. I think the CES letter came out around 2014, if memory serves. I could be wrong.
Really? That was on my mission. I didn't see it until 2019.
Yeah. So it's been a while. But I find it fascinating because I don't know if you remember either. You may have been on your mission just by what you just said, but during the first Trump administration, there were people who were scouring Twitter and other social medias for things that could be considered wrongthink, and that's where the whole cancel culture came from. Yeah.
Which, by the way, speaking of cancel culture, is this? Jimmy Kimmel was just shut down. You have different people losing their job for celebrating the assassination.
Yeah,
is that cancel culture?
I would say it is, honestly, and that's one of the things that really kind of gives me the ick. I really do not care for cancel culture, even if I don't necessarily agree with someone. If they're being canceled, it better be because the program is losing money, like Colbert was, or they are just tanking in the ratings. Like, if you really want to cancel someone, especially someone of that high profile, just stop watching their show. Like, oh, that's all you got to do. Turn it off or change the channel.
Fair enough. Okay.
And that's the thing. Like the less people, the more money that product loses, the more likely they're going to pull it. That, just because someone is sharing a stupid opinion doesn't necessarily mean that they should be canceled over it. It was wrong then, it's wrong now.
Okay, but what about, there's obviously some limits to that, because if someone, gets up and like, well, I guess the consequence would be, from your point of view, would be, well, then we as a people better not accept that and stop watching them, right? We better have some morals as a people, and let our the money talk. So
vote
I'm arguing on your behalf for what I was about to say.
Yeah, exactly. But like when it comes to like the regular layman, right? The only thing that I would actively say is if they're calling for someone to be harmed. Like if they're celebrating Charlie Kirk's death, I think it's abhorrent. I think it's reprehensible, but I don't think they should lose their job over it. If someone is saying,
what if the job is like to make American flags or something, and part of the company culture is to celebrate free speech, and it's literally like in the company's motto, like, we love free speech.
let them keep their job. The only time that I think
again,
lose
it'd be a weird thing. Like they lose their job because you love free speech, but you don't love that free speech. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I'm just trying to think of like
if they're actively pushing for someone to be harmed. Like if someone said Charlie Kirk was first and you're next, then yes, they absolutely should lose their job.
Threats
like that. That's the thing. It's active threats.
Is celebrating it not an implicit threat to anyone who holds the same beliefs?
I don't think it is.
Okay.
I don't think it is.
I'm just pushing you a little bit. It's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get to Word Radio's response to this, because it was a big response.
I got to step away for a second, so I will be right back.
I will read this. It's more than just disagreeing. Okay, so real quick, Jim Bennett, let me just recap here. Messaged us out that it's unsettling that people in MAG are using this murder in ways to threaten and punish people who don't vote the same way. And Ward Radio responded, so this is Cardin said, it's more than just disagreeing with someone that doesn't, quote, vote the way you do. The progressive mockery of Charlie Kirk and his grieving fans after his death is one of the most disgusting things I've seen in my adult life, and it's not just reserved to fringe voices. The amount of mainstream liberals that have celebrated this or excused it is absolutely astonishing, and MAGA doesn't have to twist anything to hear their vitriol and toxicity loud and clear. I love you, buddy, but I really think you should sit this one out for a while, because your fellow liberals are doing some of the most hateful and ugly crap I've seen right now. This is unprecedented. So, I hearted that one. You can see. I'm exposed here. Right, because I think he's right that like people... To say that people are upset about those who vote differently, I think misses the point. I think the entire reason people are having a hard time with this is because of the actual celebrations. And like this goes beyond just like the crazies on TikTok who, my goodness, some of those people that I've seen on there, I don't even use TikTok. I've just seen clips that people have shared of people celebrating this. But one of the, welcome back, by the way.
Thanks.
One of the things that also is happening too is mainstream, Carter mentions it here, the amount of mainstream liberals. So you have some people in media, including, I don't know, there's like some people, they're not necessarily like celebrating it, but you do hear people excusing it. Someone on the mainstream media was talking about the texts between the murderer and his boyfriend, and they said, oh, it's just, what did they say? What was the word that they said? But they're like, it's just heart. Oh my gosh, what did he say? Nah, see, I'm losing it right now. But basically, you're saying like, it just tugs at your heartstrings to hear like this back and forth between the two of them. It's like tugs at your heartstrings. Like, are you serious? Like, he's being very sympathetic to it. You have other language that's very like sympathetic towards the killer. A lot of like people who aren't celebrating it, but they're like, celebrating those who celebrate it in a way. And so, I tend to agree, I think, with Cardin on this point. I don't, like, at the same time, I understand that what Jim's saying, that there are crazies who are threatening him, potentially threatening people who just vote differently, and it's like, okay, no, it's not that, but also, it's not just people that vote differently that's the problem here. Anyway, your thoughts before we move on to more of what was discussed.
I would honestly say that Cardin is right here. It's the mockery. Like I said, it's disgusting. It absolutely is disgusting. Like I said, though, I don't think anybody should lose their job over this, but I do think that it is kind of refreshing to see Cardin saying, look, Jim, I love you, but you kind of need to step back from this. You're not making yourself look good. And that was one of my criticisms of Cardin for a while, because I know how close he and Jim are.
Yeah, they're friends.
And I was like, I wonder if there's a blind spot there. But seeing this, like, that blind spot might not be as big as originally thought.
Okay, so Jim went through and responded and he used Grok to show that there's a lot of right-wing precedent of, the right side, if you will, is elevating the violent talk more than the left side. So he says, Cardin, I hope the stream of examples and Grok posts I've provided show you that there's way too much right-wing precedent on this, and that Trump is the most rhetorically and actually violent president since the Civil War. We do not seem to share a common set of facts. So, there definitely is some inflammatory language, I think, on the right, as well as the left. And I mean, as peacemakers, I hope we kind of dissolve some of these labels and just think of people as individuals. Roy Drader responded, Jim, stop for 1 second. Charlie Kirk, the beloved older brother of millions of Gen Z boys and avid defender of Christ, was just murdered by a leftist. Do you want to be a human and mourn with those who mourn for a minute and then assess rhetoric once the funeral ends? Or do you really want to launch into blaming MAGA for all this right now? Do you really think anyone doubts your MAGA hatred enough that if you were a catalyst for liberal Mormon self-reflection here for a moment, they would kick you out of the club? Or does your hatred for Trump just blind you that badly? Be a leader, dude. Many people look to your account as a litmus for liberal Mormon thought. And I got to tell you, I think crawling down the throat of MAGA the week the biggest MAGA social media influencer was just killed in your society's backyard is a really bad look and a choice you would not take if you thought long enough about it. Your thoughts, Latter-day Lion?
This is something that I honestly don't really have very many words for this. I mean, this is something I was not necessarily expecting, because a lot of the times Cardin would jump to Jim's defense, and again, this is very refreshing to say, like, okay, this is this is a friend calling out a friend, saying, look, you're going down a road I can't follow. And this
Star Wars reference? Yeah, absolutely.
I will do that. I am an unashamed nerd. But this is essentially Cardin saying that, like, he is Padme here to Jim's Anakin, just as Anakin is going down the dark side to being Darth Vader. I think I side more with Cardin on this one, but I want to give grace to Jim, because I know, like, I understand some of what he's saying, because it's interesting, the echo chambers that we all live in, myself included, everyone in the chat, you're also in an echo chamber in some way, because the algorithms feed things that it knows we want to interact with. We interact with things we want to interact with, and it's just this feedback loop. So I understand. So, like, a lot of stuff that Jim's seeing and things that he's kind of retweeting and looking at are examples of some violent rhetoric. I think some of the stuff Trump is saying, I think you could say goes a little too far. I do think, if we are going to talk about right and left, I think we need to mention that it's extreme. Yeah. And so some people are mad at Jim. So when I was talking to him, some people wanted him to apologize for calling Trump a fascist and whatnot. And he actually ended up making a pretty long thread about that, which I think is quite respectable. But like, on the people on the right call the left communists, the people on the left call the right fascists.
I think
neither are accurately applied in my mind.
well, they
really.
might be on the extremes, you know.
On the
and-
extremes, maybe, but like with the people that are being labeled that, like people labeled Charlie Kirk as a fascist. People are labeling
Right.
Trump as one. Meanwhile, people are also we're labeling Biden as a communist and Obama and Hillary. Like, no,
Well, you
No.
can see, I mean, and to some extent, I don't think that counts as inflammatory language necessarily. I think it does when you start saying Hitler,
mm-hmm.
because I think we all know what that means. But like, you know, I don't know. I'm kind of back and forth with that because,
And this is where things are kind of. Do you have the screenshot of Jim's reply to Cardin? By the way, because I think this is something
I don't on this one.
Okay,
but
because I'm looking at it right now.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
And I can go ahead and just read it. He says, "Mourning, Cardin. This isn't what mourning looks like. This is threatening. This is escalating. It's not about blame. It's about public safety. People now want revenge, and they want to exact it from people like me. So
See,
I can understand Jim's concern here.
I understand too, but he's also lumping himself into a group that I don't think he belongs into.
No."
Like, some people think he belongs there, and so he might be actually, in fact, he's told me as much that he's received actual threats and whatnot, because some people think he is some left-wing extremist, but he really isn't. And so the problem is when he says that, he is lumping himself into there, and it's like, Jim, I don't think you're doing yourself favors. Like, you know, I understand that he's trying to like keep people safe and whatnot, including himself. I really think that's a good thing. I think everyone needs to tone down the temperature.
Yeah.
But like, Jim, don't lump yourself in with the people that
don't lump yourself in with destiny. Don't do that.
Yeah. So,
like,
but I understand what he's doing, but Jim, you're not one of the people that people should be mad at. Maybe some people are, but I think if they are, they're aiming their anger inappropriately because Jim has never celebrated this. He has been sad, like, you know, he tweeted about it. He's just worried about safety in general, and yeah, anyway, so that's kind of my thoughts on that.
I mean, and again, like, I can understand Jim's concern. And the thing is that for a lot of people, especially those that may be more right-leaning, you know, regardless of where you fall yourself and as far as political parties or political ideology is concerned, a lot of people, especially on the right, when they saw what happened to Charlie Kirk, they were like, what does this mean now for those that dare speak up on the right? Because this is one of the things that honestly has been happening when these college campus tours were happening, and we've seen videos about this where people how often do we see those that consider themselves leftists when they go to college campuses or things like that? How often do they need high levels of security? It happens, sure, but does it happen as often as those that may consider to be on the right? Well, you know, that I think is the important question that we have here. And why are people like those right-leaning speakers needing more security than those that may be on the left?
Yeah. And I think someone kind of pointed this out. Cardin is also not helping in the sense that he is almost lumping himself in with MAGA, which I don't think that's accurate. And he's also lumping in Jim with like the liberal Mormon dude. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Jim wants to be the liberal Mormon dude. But
let him.
Sure, if he wants to be. I just don't think that's accurate of how. I don't know. He's a rhino, Republican in name only right now. Yeah, he's a traditional. He's a Bush Republican type. That's what he is, and he's been that for a long time. And things have changed a lot politically in the last few years. I think things have gotten more extreme, and I think these are examples of two men who I think, you know, respect each other, who are just both worried for different reasons, and I think that's why it's worth bringing up here, because, you know, there's a lot of chaos happening.
Yeah,
and we want people to feel safe. We also, you know, don't want to celebrate something terrible. That's like just a sign of a very unhealthy society, that people would celebrate something so sad, like just heartbreakingly sad, that happened to a man that everyone had to witness live. Which, by the way, let me just say something real quick.
Yeah.
With Charlie Kirk's death, it reminded me of, like a lot of people have been sad about this, and I just think about the saints when Joseph Smith was murdered. Can you imagine, like, the prophet of the Restoration gets shot, and then from some accounts, they go out and shoot him again, his body that's there, that he may have still been alive when he fell out of the window, and then they shot him. And so it was just like brutal public execution of your prophet. And I mean, Charlie Kirk was not a prophet, right? But like some people really liked him. The saints loved Joseph. And like, it's just, I'm grateful that we're in times where, prophets of the church are not being murdered. Cause it gave me a new appreciation for the saints, because like, how much different would this be if like President Nelson were out giving a public talk and then something like that happened to him? It would just be, oh man, just a devastation. Like, people are worried about Charlie Kirk being murdered because like, hey, I have some similar views to him. People can hate you just for your views. And so you can imagine those saints just felt so unsafe that not only was the prophet murdered, but like the law literally said, like, you can go out and murder. It's like no different than like killing a pig or something like that. When you kill a Mormon, I think is basically how the law works. So anyway,
well, that's what the extermination order was.
Exactly. Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Drive them from the state or kill them on site. Like that's what it was.
So I understand why people are scared, but I'm just thinking the saints back then had it worse. Yes. They definitely did. And I'm glad that like we're in a time where things are much safer than that. It kind of just gave me a new perspective on some of the stuff those saints went through. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, let me offer a new perspective, because after Charlie Kirk's death, it took me a while to kind of parse these thoughts, and I've been writing a script for an upcoming video on this subject.
Check him out, Latter-day Lion on YouTube. And are you on TikTok too?
I am on TikTok, yes. So
Barf.
YouTube, TikTok, X, and Instagram.
Okay.
And with this upcoming video, I actually wanted to make the connection to the Book of Mormon. And here's the reason why. After my mission, I actually went to a fireside with the local mission president. And one of the things he said during that fireside has affected me even almost 2 decades later, where he said that the Book of Mormon, because it was written especially for us, kind of echoing what Elder Bednar said this last conference.
Oh yeah.
That there's a reason why Mormon and Moroni included in what they did in the abridgment. And again, another Star Wars reference, like how George Lucas was comparing the original trilogy to the prequels. He was saying it's like poetry, it rhymes. There are similar story beats to both, even though it's not exactly the same story. It's that rhyming nature, and we see that happening. When we see the legacy of the Nephite nation, when we compare it to the Jaredites, with the abridgment of the Book of Ether.
Yeah.
And
my favorite book.
Yeah, well, obviously.
Yeah.
But the circumstance that we see here is that the same type of pitfalls that the Jaredites went through in Ether, we see on at least a larger scale with the Nephites throughout the main narrative of the Book of Mormon.
A more detailed scale, because Book of Ether zooms out quite a bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if we are truly to believe what Mormon and Moroni say about the Book of Mormon being written for us, and that it's written for our day, I don't think it's an accident that the circumstances that we read about in the Book of Mormon, especially prior to Christ's coming, is that dissimilar. Now, people may think that I am way off base for it, and you're welcome to think that, but
we can agree to disagree, people.
Absolutely. And so, but the thing is that what immediately came to mind was that we're seeing a lot of the similar instances that happened in late Helaman, early third Nephi.
Okay, now you're just scaring me, because now it's
but it's not meant to be scary, because what happens?
Well, the beautiful part of that is the voice of the Lord saying his arms of mercy are outstretched before us.
Well, and the way that what immediately thought about that was primarily in 3rd Nephi 1. where like we're seeing the chief judge murdered, and I'm not saying that Charlie Kirk was the chief judge. Yeah. And so we have Pehoran the second murdered suddenly. We have Laconius. We have so many of these political figures murdered, sometimes even on the judgment seat.
Yeah.
And all of this political strife and all of these things that are signaling societal collapse. And then the Savior comes. And that, I think, is something that we look at here. And that, I think, is something to look forward to. Because, again, the Book of Mormon was written for us.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that. And again, I personally do not think that it's an accident that Mormon and Moroni included the things that they did in the abridgment. And if we want to make that connection, sure, absolutely. But and if you want to say I'm off base, fine, sure, I don't care.
But we are Latter-day Saints.
Yes.
So we are, by virtue of the name, in the latter days, if you are a believing Latter-day Saint. So, I mean,
right. This is the last dispensation. This is the dispensation of the fullness of times before the second coming of the Savior.
I want Jesus to come back, man.
Seriously, I do too, honestly, with how crappy everything is going right now. But that's the thing. Like,
even if it's not going crappy, everything would be better with Jesus.
We have General Conference coming in 2 weeks. And think about all of the talks that have been happening just in the last few years and all of the current events that we've been seeing in the last few years. And then compare them to the events in the Book of Mormon and how the prophets spoke in the Book of Mormon, how they spoke to the Nephites, and what led up to the coming of the Savior at Bountiful.
Yeah, I think
there's a lot of hope
going to be some parallels,
despite all the scary things.
Yeah.
I don't mean to scare you, but I mean to bring you hope. That means that Christ is coming soon. At least it does in my mind. Now, I have no idea when that's going to happen.
It's been soon for a while. I mean, the Saints back in Joseph Smith's day thought that he was coming back, and every generation's like, he's coming this year.
well, yes, but there's a reason why, like, especially among the lay members, no man knows the day or the hour.
Sure, yeah.
But the thing is that I think it's a lot closer than people realize. But I also don't think that it's going to be as far away as we think either.
Yeah, I think there's probably
we're going to see a lot of signs and wonders and a lot of tribulation before that happens. Yeah, but it is something to look forward to, and those who have eyes to see will see.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm not sure it has to get like necessarily that things have to get bad for him to come. I know, but
a lot of people will think that, but you may be right.
But that doesn't mean things have to be good either. Like, I don't know. Like, there's definitely prophecies that sound pretty darn bad.
Well,
but it's hard to say.
There's a reason why we're building as many temples as we are, though.
Oh, we're definitely trying to prepare for it. I mean, that's one of the big missions of the church.
Let me throw out another thing for you.
Real quick, let me just read this from Kiori. Thoughts about 3i / Atlas comet thingy. Or is it 31 or 3i? I can't really read that from here.
It looks like 3i.
So do you know what that is, real quick?
I actually don't. I haven't heard about that.
Okay, I'm going to look it up while you are telling me about the second coming.
Yeah. So 3i is what he says. So, so when I was on my mission, my very last area, the branch president actually mentioned that the more temples dot the earth, the more opposition will rise. Kind of like what it says in 2 Nephi, there must needs be opposition in all things. So the worse the world gets, the more places of holy sanctuary they are. And if that does not spur you to go to the temple more often, it should.
Yeah.
Because we need those temples in order to not just prepare for the second coming, but to also escape from the world, to feel the love that the Savior and the Lord has for us. There is something to President Nelson repeatedly, every conference. I don't know about anybody else, but it's like, okay, what temple is he going to announce this time? Is it going to be somewhere close to me or where I serve my mission? Where's it going to be? We've got people doing pools. Like, okay, where's it going to be this time, folks? Roll the dice, roll the wheel, let's go.
Yeah, the polls, the betting odds.
The betting odds.
Get those tithing vouchers if you win.
Exactly.
Free tithing for the rest of the year for so and so. We got 9
Come
out
on,
of 10
come
temples.
all, come choose the next temple location.
Yeah.
But that I think is the circumstance there, because as things go, especially after this last week, and again, regardless of what side of the aisle you may fall on, there can't be a denial that there was a shift that happened last week.
Will it calm down though?
I don't know.
Like, is this just going to come and go like other things? Because
it maybe we don't know. I mean, like, again, going back to the Book of Mormon, this is 1,000 years of history. And so there were plenty of times. I mean, how many times did we read about where Mormon says, such and such year passed away in peace, such and such year, and such year passed away in peace, and then in such and such, and toward the end of such and such year, the there began to be small
growing number of
battles and things like that, and that only started to escalate. So
real quick, 3I Atlas is a giant comet. It's an interstellar comet. According to Wikipedia, it poses no threat to Earth. It will not come closer than 1/8. Oh, okay, that is equivalent to 170 million miles to Earth. But it was first discovered in Chile in 2025, July 1st, 2025. Is this the one that like they think could possibly run into Earth at some point?
Maybe. There's some that are throwing out there like that. I'm looking it up myself, and apparently, like according to Fox Chicago, they're saying that it's a possibility. It's an alien ship. What?
Is it Jesus coming down? Is he flying into space? I don't know why you'd do that instead of just do what he did with Joseph. With a beeline
straight for the Mount of Olives. That's how he's going to split it. He's going to crash a comet right into it.
I don't know what that is, Kiori, but I'll have to keep an eye on that one. Let's get to our last segment here, which is the lived experience, the Through Elephant's Eye. So I just wanted to talk about this video I made real quick. If you haven't seen it, do me a favor, go check it out. It's a video about science and God, and I review kind of this discussion that Andrew Huberman had on his podcast, Huberman Lab. I struggle to pronounce his last name a little bit, but please forgive me. And I titled it, Andrew Huberman drops a God-sized truth bomb on science, basically saying that God and science can coexist. So he's a famous, if you don't know who he is, do you know who he is? Latter-day Lion?
No, I don't think I've heard of him.
He's a famous scientist. He works at Stanford University. He's a neuroscientist. Dr. Huberman talks a lot about the latest in research. I was actually introduced to him from in graduate school, and I really enjoy listening to him and learning from him. But he does believe in God, and he has an episode talking to, I believe he's like a psychologist that talks about kind of the benefits of religion. And it's a really good episode, and it's one that I took clips from to talk about. So please check it out. If you haven't, I think it's a good episode. I don't know. I was pretty pleased with it because I like this idea of talking about science and God. I think the church is just a great vehicle for all types of truth, and that includes scientific truth. I make the bold statement in the video. I say that if you think that God and science are not compatible, you either don't understand God or don't know much about the scientific method. And we talk about, I have some clips from William Lane Craig in there, who talks about where science falls short. I have obviously clips from Andrew, Dr. Huberman, and clips from his guest in there, all kind of talking about this. I tell a story of a hypothetical story, and I talk about miracles and how that's kind of like an area where science and God, kind of like the belief in God, kind of come together, and like what it means when something like a miracle happens, and if it changes, if it's a miracle, if it can be explained, and all that kind of stuff. So if you haven't, check it out. Getting some fun comments in the video. But yeah, your thoughts? God and science, are they compatible?
Yes.
Close case. There it is.
There it is. Yeah, I really don't understand why people think they're somehow incompatible. Like, how else are we to understand how the world works, how the universe works? And if we are to participate in the creation process, like what has been promised to us, we need to know how things work.
Yeah. And I'm a scientist by trade. I am what I would call an applied scientist. I do that for a living. And it's great. So I consider myself a person of science. And I like science a lot. One of the parts that I talk about in the video is this idea, the guest on Andrew Huberman's podcast talks about how there is no conflict between God and science. And he's not really even a believer himself necessarily, but he says one area where people kind of start to think there is potential problems with God and science is when they take texts very literally, and then there can be like some things there, and I bring up that, like every Latter-day Saint has to answer some of these questions for themselves, but like the one thing is we don't believe in literal like translation of the Bible. Like the Bible to us is not like literally God speaking every single word of the Bible by any stretch of the imagination. And so like there's much more wiggle room for Latter-day Saints when it comes to understanding some of this stuff. And I think for each member gets to decide some of that for themselves, just because I don't think the church is going to make official statements on what elements of the Bible are historical literature or historical fact versus just ancient kind of literature that's based on fact that's trying to tell certain stories. But at the end of the day, I agree with President Nelson, who said, he even said this about the Book of Mormon. And he's not saying that it's not historical. That's not what he's saying. He said that the Book of Mormon isn't a history book. It's a scripture book. He's trying to say...
It's not a textbook.
Right, it's not a textbook. I think he's trying to say that, it's not meant to be, recording everything that happened in history. As you said, it's an abridgment that's meant to teach us stuff. And so certain stories were picked over other stories for their benefit of how things can be taught. And there's... The truth in the Book of Mormon is not, supposed to be, this historical document. The truth is the testimony of Jesus Christ. And do I think, I think personally that Nephi was a real person. I do think that. I do think I'm a big fan of the Book of Mormon. I love the Book of Mormon.
I would hope so.
It's true. But
otherwise,
when we say it's true,
name of this channel will be a bit of a misnomer.
Yeah, no, but I also believe that it you can believe in the Book of Mormon fully and have it be compatible with science for sure. And I mean, science, the scientific method is all about making observations, forming a hypothesis based on those observations, and then putting that hypothesis to the test in some kind of an experiment, and then getting evidence over and over and over to create theories. But all of it is not proving anything, rather it's creating evidence for things, and theories are just based off the best evidence that we have. That's why sometimes theories on occasion can change and be updated because we have further evidence. Chemistry is one of those areas where I think it's changed a lot in recent years as we get deeper and deeper. Oh, you mean electrons and neutrons and protons aren't the smallest things. There's these even smaller things called quarks and stuff, and it starts to kind of, or even Einstein's theory kind of broke down some of Newton's theories about physics. And then you have to create new theories to kind of explain. And so it's all just an attempt to understand the observable universe. And it's a beautiful thing. And I think it can really help people. Well, if you ask Dr. Andrew Huberman, he, as a neuroscientist, as he studies the brain, and learning how these things work, to him, he becomes closer to God in that sense, because of the marvel of how these things work is amazing. Even understanding more about how it works doesn't mean that just because it can be explained doesn't mean it's not a miracle.
Right. And this is where I think a lot of people don't quite understand, where you have so many different opinions, and and this really causes a problem, because I've had so many people, whenever I do TikTok lives, will say religion is incompatible with science. But as a Latter-day Saint, it says right there in our scriptures, the glory of God is intelligence. And when surveys are done, the more that we learn, especially in the secular world, the more faithful we become on average. Like there's data to support this. And so science to say that science. Oh, that was. I was like, wait, what happened?
Sorry, I meant this button.
No, you're good.
To say that science. Keep going.
Yeah, to say that science and religion are incompatible, it has a complete. It gives a short-sighted understanding of both.
Yeah,
I feel like, so. and it especially like when we are to have eternal life, when we obtain exaltation, we need to understand how things worked. We need to understand how the molecules of water were to come together so that we can, be shown and then eventually do it ourselves, just like our dads would show us before, even here on Earth, how to divide the waters from the land, and be able to do that. Imagine us being with Jesus and the Father, like, okay, this is how you do it, son. Like that's kind of the same deal when we're learning how to fish, or we're in the garage and we're building something. Like these types of things are what I imagine how things are going to be like in the eternities. We're going to be shown how to do that by our Father. And
you kind of buy
we
into
need to understand
idea,
how it works.
Do you subscribe to the idea that God is basically the ultimate scientist?
Yeah, I do. He's the ultimate scientist and the ultimate artist.
Oh, okay. And the artist in there. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. So we're going to end with this last super chat from Truth from Earth. So I saw he had a video recently kind of talking about some stuff about the plan of salvation. And he says, quote, "Did Lucifer want to force us to be good or erase the consequences of sin? The answer solves the partisan divide. Love your enemies equals the Constitution." So let me say some stuff and then I'll let you talk about this.
Okay.
So I actually like that idea. Love your enemies equals the Constitution. I hadn't really thought about that because life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which actually I guess is the Declaration, not in the Constitution, but it kind of builds off of those principles. The Bill of Rights and all that build off of those principles of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which means inherently that you are to acknowledge the worth of your enemies, and everyone, even if they're your enemy, is allowed life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and you just can't encroach on that. So I like that part of it. Did Lucifer want us to force us to be good or erase the consequences of sin? I don't know, but either way, his plan, if you call it a plan, his anti-plan, if you will, it's not like Heavenly Father was considering what he was doing here. It's not like he was like, let me...
There was only one plan presented in the council.
Let me compare these two plans. Like, no, that's not really how it was. But like, it was kind of an anti-plan in the sense that he had something that was distinct from everything else. But anyway, neither one would work in the sense that in order, at least this is what I think, in order for us to achieve an exaltation, a relationship with God in the eternities, it has to be freely chosen. And so I don't think you can force people to do good and achieve the same outcome. And I don't think you can. I also think it's impossible to erase consequences of sin. In fact, you could even argue that erasing the consequences of sin is what Jesus did, because without him, we would have major consequences of sin. And so he suffered for us so that we could get through what we have to get through in order to return back to the Father, so we can learn what we have to learn. But ultimately, you can't have a loving relationship without the choice to be loving in that relationship, or else it's coercive. And that's not a loving relationship. So like, by definition, I think, of what a loving relationship is, you have to have free choice in there. And I think the gospel is all about a loving relationship that we've been invited into. So your thoughts, Latter-day.
My thoughts on this, like as far as the plan of salvation is concerned, I personally think that it was Lucifer's plan to erase opposition. Not to erase to erase moral agency or the consequences of sin, but to erase the opposition of it. To basically, everyone would be like Adam and Eve in the garden before the fall. And that, I think, is one of the things. Because when push comes to shove, when we look at it, when the plan was presented, I think Lucifer was like, wait. He thought he saw a flaw when there really isn't one. And the flaw that thought he saw would result in so many people not being able to return home. But that's kind of the natural consequence of it. It's like the consequences, like what Truth from Earth was saying, that the Constitution enshrines. There are consequences, and for some they may consider to be drawbacks to each of the amendments in the Constitution and each of the articles there. But in order for the Constitution and for the country to thrive, those drawbacks would have to be recognized as at least somewhat of a good. Or even if you don't necessarily look at them as a good, it helps preserve the good that the Constitution protects. And even if we're just to look at the Bill of Rights, and it's the same thing when it comes to the plan of salvation. Yes, there could be drawbacks based on how we use our moral agency, based on whether or not we accept the atonement of Jesus Christ. We're still going to be resurrected, but that doesn't necessarily mean that because of our obedience or disobedience in one respect or another, that we're going to have the same glory as the Father and the Son.
Right. No, we get resurrected in different bodies.
Right. And that is something that we have for. So yeah, we will still have our salvation. Our salvation is freely given to us thanks to the resurrection. Our exaltation, our eternal life, that is dependent on our obedience. And that's what the plan is predicated on. It's all upon our reliance to Jesus Christ and his atonement and his redeeming power.
Yeah.
But if we're not willing to accept that, then we won't have that glory that he has.
Yeah. So, I mean, this has been a fun conversation. Latter-day Lion, you said you can be found on TikTok, Instagram, X, and YouTube, right?
Right here. Yep.
All right.
Exactly.
So go check him out. He's making good stuff over there. Thanks for coming on. It was like a last-minute thing, so I appreciate you jumping on. But, okay. One more super chat before we finish up. Let's just finish up with what Truth from Earth is saying here. More likely force us or force others to be good. Police state. Justice without mercy or mercy without justice equals denial of the atonement of Christ. It's both.
100%.
Yeah. No, and I think that's right. I think one of the reasons that the Book of Mormon is just so awesome is like this discussion on justice and mercy, particularly in the Book of Alma. That's just Book of Mormon's great, guys. If you haven't read it,
absolutely.
I know we're kind of getting into kind of more deeper theology here of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. If you're not a member, you gotta read the Book of Mormon. It's my favorite book of all time. Life-changing book for sure. And is speaking of, science and God, if you want to apply the scientific method, at least in your own life, that's essentially what people are doing when they engage with the Book of Mormon. It is an experiment to observe what's happening in the lives of those who live and follow the teachings of the Book of Mormon, of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and then experiment, read the Book of Mormon, start acting in faith, and then you can find out for yourself. And that's ultimately the best evidence you can get for something is an experience, a spiritual experience that enlightens you personally. And you can't give that to someone else. And that's why our missionaries, that's why everyone is saying, hey, go and have this experience for yourself, because I can't give it to you. I can't convince you with logic like some of the traditional Christians do. I can't convince you with science. I can only ask you to experience this for yourself, but there's a way to do that. And the Book of Mormon is one of the best catalysts to receive personal revelation. But anyway, everyone, it's really sad what happened to Charlie Kirk. It's still sad. There's a lot of fallout for him. I really hope that we can all come together, be peacemakers, but also stand up for truth and fight bad ideologies, not with weapons, because weapons don't kill ideologies, but with peace, kindness, and spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ. This is Ether's Elephant. That is Latter-day Lion. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one.